Saloum is a 2021 Senegalese horror thriller written and directed by Jean-Luc Herbolet, with additional writing by Pamela Diop. The film follows three mercenaries fleeing a country undergoing a coup. During their escape, they lose fuel and are forced to land at a holiday camp. However, as their true identity is exposed, it becomes clear something more dangerous is lying in wait. Will our mercenaries survive? Will they save anyone? Or will they all drown? Speaking of drowning, the film opens up on some child walking into a lake, revolver and chain in hand. But what did we just see? We'll get answers soon enough. First, we need to establish just how good our mercenary protags are, navigating the streets of Guinea-Bissau during the actual 2003 coup. I have to point out that this director's pacing makes it rather enjoyable. Only problem I have is that the 2003 coup was bloodless. Who took out all these people? That'll have to be answered another day, as we gotta get the target, the gold, and secure transportation. Taking off, the trio, plus one, remark over $525,000 worth of gold, plus what they'll give for delivering the drug dealer. All they need to do is rest for the entire trip to Dakar. But this is a horror movie, and something needs to go wrong. And the plane does just that as it begins losing fuel and fast. Deciding to land, Felix, played by renowned Farah, is immediately against the idea. Well, time for the Sandman.
Si vous pas me ramener à Dakar, voy a matarlos, hijos de puta. Matarlos, matarlos, matarlos!
That would be a good time to mention our trio of hyenas. The leader, Chaka, played by Jan Gal. The wizard, Minuet, played by Mentor Ba. And last, but certainly not least, the tank, Rafa, played by Roger Salah. Finding the source of the leakage reveals this was sabotage. Well, with no way of flying, Chaka comes up with a plan. Bury the gold, hide the plane, and start hoofing it to Nindangang. Second part of the plan is to rent a boat and cross to a holiday camp. However, Chaka seems concerned by the water. I wonder what that could mean. Well, the montage of sleeping is mixed with footage of running. Enough of that, time to wake up on the island and introduce ourselves. This is Omar, played by Bruno Henry, who is happy to have visitors. However, when he mentions that there's no vacancy, Chaka motions for Minuet to pull a little magic. Meanwhile, we learn the currency used here. You help out, you get the pleasures. Yeah, but still no room, so... We had just found an opening, and just in time for dinner. At this dinner, we meet the rest of our cast for the film. Omar's right-hand man, Salamane, played by Babacar Ole. The ex-couple, now new collaborators in the arts, Yance and Sephora, played by Kanabesi and Marielle Salmier. A police captain, Suleiman, played by Ndiaga Mbao. And finally, the deaf-mute Awa, played by Evelyn Ili Juhen. Despite Chaka providing fake names and insisting they're with a gold mining operation to the south, Awa is able to recognize them. She's ready to play deal or no deal. Deal, she goes with them. No deal, she exposes them. Perhaps letting the hidden mercs know you know who they are isn't the smartest idea. She learns how smart it is when Chaka confronts her. Well, the next day when chores are being handed out, we learn that Rafa did more than just clean the bar. Anyways, everyone gets their chores. Rafa and Awa discuss her reason for wanting to run with devils. Here we learn there's conflicting accounts of the hyenas. In fact, she believes they are heroes. Minuet and Saloum drop off supplies to a nearby village which has some odd customs going on. Well, unlike them, we don't get an earful. Then there's Felix and Saloum. Here the captain reveals he knows everything, and his men are in position. Felix need only keep the hyenas distracted and away from their guns. Speaking of guns, Shaka and Omar are laying in wait with BB rifles. Their targets? Poachers. Seeing them off, the two bond and get heading back.
Nous partageons donc ça en commun.
Quoi donc?
Les champs de bataille.
Returning to the camp, the hyenas can tell something is going down, so Shaka moves in on Awa. Then we get one more blurry vision of the child, this time caged but ready to fight. And fight he does, freeing himself and fleeing. Well, enough of that, it's time for dinner, and Omar encourages everyone to share their stories. And oh boy, does Shaka have a story to tell! He starts by asking where the shack went. Then he starts recounting how hot it got during the day, how freezing it was at night, how fast he ran to get away. He accuses Omar of raping an 11-year-old child soldier while giving promises of security. But that isn't all. Turns out, his name isn't even Omar.
On l'appelait le colonel Remington. Parce que, sur le champ de bataille, ça lui portait ça.
Guns start getting drawn, Shaka reveals the brand marks, and Colonel Remington realizes who is sat before him. Then the trigger is squeezed.
Omar, qu'est-ce que t'as fait?
With that, Remington is dead. The hyenas realize it was Shaka who damaged their fuel tank, and Saloum is calling for backup. But Shocker, the man who planned this from the start, is 2 steps ahead. He in fact used the gold to bribe the police. So that was Saloum, a short, sweet, intense tale of revenge and hatred. Wait, why is it suddenly day? Wait, what's that black spooky stuff? Wait, why the fuck is Felix screaming? Yeah, this is where the film takes a turn. We go from what would be called a thriller, or to some degrees a drama, and enter the horror portion of the film. Is it as good? Let us see. The remaining people flee into Awa's building. As Minuet looks over Felix's body, Saloum reveals that the spirit cannot get to them thanks to the artificial light and electromagnetic waves. Now prepare yourself, as what follows can get a bit confusing if you aren't paying attention, or are, like me, naive to different African terms. Essentially, Omar was the guardian for some spirit. Weapons will do no good against it, nor will their grigras, aka amulets. However, their bawiti will make them resistant. The spirit they face is a Bainuk spirit, namely the curse of Gana Sirabana. Also, the villagers, or Daola, are on the side of the spirit, which has cursed Saloum. The curse of Sirabana is basically Rebecca Black's Friday, in that upon hearing its words, one is decayed from the inside out. With headsets on, Shaka and Awa set out to retrieve some more from the artist's room. Both argue back and forth while moving through the camp. Shaka retrieves the headsets, but something nabs Awa. Cranking up the Walkman, Shaka gives chase, only to get sacked by a creature. It attempts to remove his headset, but Awa is able to retrieve the Remington and kill the attacker. I tell you what, these kids bop sellers are really getting aggressive. Getting back, we learn that while the spirit is unkillable, it also isn't exactly physical. Those things running around are possessed villagers being used to remove their protection. A plan of escape is formed. They need fuel and resin, both of which can be found in the village. So taking Remington's quad bikes, Shaka, Rafa, and Saloum and the captain head out. Meanwhile, Awa and Minuet secure transportation off the island. But before that, the Brotherhood needs to reconcile. We then hit the village, and while the camera can get a bit too shaky, it's still fun to watch and keeps reminding me of RE5, but with the Leechmen of Resident Evil Outbreak. Reaching the supplies, something calls the Shaka, and leads him to a strange tree and then to a hut with the letter R. Going inside, he finds it full of children, and he doesn't take this very well. Interrogating Saloum, we learn that the children were Remington's currency with the spirits, but Shaka knows he wouldn't do this for just some beach, for it turns out he found the entity. What's the entity? We'll never find out. With their supplies gathered, they chase after Saloum, running into more possessed villagers. Fighting breaks out, and by the end, the captain is killed, as is Saloum, who is getting the blaxploitation version of Children of the Corn. While this has been going on, Minuit tried rescuing the artist only to find them dead. By the time his partners return, he has sacrificed himself. Seems off-screen he took a few down hand to hand, and now with his Bawiti, he is able to hold the spirit's attention. They must kill him so his body may serve as a distraction for their escape. There's no time to mourn as the villagers are pouring in on all sides. They rush to the boat, but oh yeah, Shaka has that fear of water. Well, Awa and Rafa force him into the boat. All seems to be going well until... Yeah, so Shaka is dragged below. Apparently his soul was heavy, now compared to when it happened to him as a child. However, all is not bad, as now the spirit flies right past the two, not even touching them. The land of Saloum is returning to a lush green. I could not find a budget for this film, and while it seems it made a worldwide gross of $5,078, that number isn't entirely accurate. See, when a film hits streaming services like this one with Shudder, it can prove rather difficult, at least in my experience, to find a true income. The film would premiere in Canada 16th of September 2021 at the Toronto International Film Festival. The final release of the film so far is in Norway 12th of November 2022 at the Oslo International Film Festival. After its initial premiere, it received critical praise and would stream internationally on Shudder in September 2022. The film would go on to win the Audience Award for Most Popular Film in the Altered States program during the 2021 Vancouver International Film Festival. Meanwhile, the director, Herb Hewlett, would win an award for the Best Director in the Next Wave section at the Fantastic Fest. The film is universally named Saloum. One interesting detail is that while French is the prominent spoken language of this film, there is also usage of Wolof. This language is used by Senegal, Mauritania, and the Gambia. Alongside Serer and Fula, it belongs to the Sengabambian branch of the Niger-Congo language. However, unlike the rest, Wolof is not a tonal language. Finally, the film was shot on location in Saloum Delta, which is part of Senegal. This river delta is located at the mouth of the Saloum River, where it flows into the North Atlantic Ocean. It goes 35 kilometers inland, which translates to 21.7 miles. So, that out of the way, let's dive into some details. First off, the coup at the start of the film was, like I said, bloodless. It was led by General Verasimo Correa Sibra against incumbent President Kumba Ayala. The reason cited for the coup was general incompetence and unpaid wages to the military. President Kumba would officially resign September 17th. In addition to this, there was a deal signed that banned Cuba from participating in any political positions for 5 years. A civilian-led transitional government led by businessman Henrique Rosa and PRS Secretary General Arthur Sanha was set up at the end of September. In the film, Rafa supposedly quotes Thomas Sankara, quote, "No one can imagine how the grain of the poor has fed the cows of the rich in our country." Now, Sankara did exist. President of Burkina Faso from his coup in 1983 to his deposition and murder in 1987. He even came to be known as Africa's Che Guevara. And while I can find all kinds of quotes pertaining to food, imports, etc., I could not find this particular quote. Maybe he did in fact say this, but I could not find anything of the sort. Now finally is the discussion of the spirits and various African mythological terms used throughout. I do apologize for my mispronunciation, as I'm sure it will occur very often. The Bainu people mentioned in the film live in Senegal as well as parts of Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. They are believed to have been the first people to occupy Lower Casablanca. Well, in the times of the Islamic Mali Empire, which lasted 1226 to 1670, there were the Bainuk people, led by King Ghana Sirabana. According to Bainuk legend, the king put a curse on his people after they assassinated him. He promised the Bainuks a dark future and their disappearance over the centuries. Being pushed further south, the Bainuk and Daolas would be conquered by the Mali Empire. The conquered Bainuks, Daolas, Basaris, Majaks, and Balantes provinces would be made into the kingdom of Kabu by the Mali Empire. History continues on there for ways that I won't begin into here. Be aware that history is a little difficult to keep track of. Pre-13th century history for the Mali Empire is rather unclear due to conflict between both Arab chroniclers and oral traditionalists. Now, the villagers are Daolas, or Yala people, who are basically owned by the curse. Minuit brings up that the Serir people live in Saloum, but while that may be the case, the Bainuk people were there first. However, the biggest reason for the curse existing is due to the Bainuk king, Ghana Sirabana's body, still lying somewhere in Saloum. Thus, his curse is with the land itself, much like the typical Indian burial ground. The only reason Remington was permitted to use the land free of attack was due to a deal, most likely involving the children, being sold as currency to the spirit. The movie never outright says if those children are Daolas or Bainuk. Finally, we reach Bawiti. Simply put, Bawiti is a spiritual discipline of the Punu people and Mitsogi people of Gabon. It is also used by the Fang people of Gabon and Cameroon. It is one of Gabon's official traditions, with some sects of the belief incorporating Christianity. Typically, the belief involves animism alongside ancestor worship. Again, with some sects tossing in a little bit of Christianity. There is surprisingly sparse information I could find pertaining to the history of these groups. I'll link a video that goes over some history of this area, though it being in French, the best way my audience, being largely English speakers, can do is set the subtitles to auto-translate, or learn French. It's good for speaking to men, I hear. So that was Saloum, and frankly, I enjoyed it. The ending leaves a rather bitter taste, and all explanations I've read for it have been mixed or simply didn't make it better. Perhaps bitter was the intention of the people behind this film. We are constantly told that revenge ends when you drown, or something like that. But ignoring the ending, this movie manages to be insanely entertaining, even for those, like me, limited to reading the subtitles for the most part. I enjoyed the action, characters, writing, and tone. The music stuck in a similar way to Ravenous's soundtrack. It was performed by someone named Rexcider, who has only 2 other credits to his name, which is a shame, as the music in here is both creative as well as very fun to listen to. Honestly, the first half of this film is its strongest aspect, but once the horror action starts, it isn't bad either. I simply found the first half to be much more engaging, and the latter half to be more entertaining, but also rather confusing and out of left field. There is criticism of how were they able to kill the spirit attackers. They were not killing the spirit, they were killing the villagers possessed by the spirit. Thus, they were able to fight back. Despite all this, I couldn't shake the feeling I was watching 2 different film ideas that were stitched together, and not in a terrible way, but in a way that is noticeable. Bone Tomahawk switches tone about halfway through, but manages to maintain consistency. This film changes in more ways than just tone. The camera work of the fights becomes more frantic compared to the opening, or brief fight with Awa. I'm left wondering if at first this was indeed a more grounded story, and then partway through shifted to being about the supernatural. Again, don't hold this against the film, I do suggest it actually. It's a genuinely good movie that is only tarnished by an abstract downer kind of ending, though there is positives to the ending with life returning and 2 of our characters surviving. So watch the film, enjoy something a little bit different. Also, always use Smith & Wesson for branding. That way they'll think there's 2 of you.
Bien évidemment de ne pas plaire à tout le monde. Pour les verres d'alcool, la corvée est équivalente au nettoyage du bar.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.